Morning. How are you all doing? Did you have a good dinner last night? What did you guys think about day one so far? Good content. Let's hear some key distinctions, takeaways, learnings. What did you guys get most out of day one? Who'd like to start? Lisa? Okay.
Cheers, dude.
I figured it's inevitable. Why not just give it to her?
One thing he's complaining that I'm heckling him, and the next minute he's trying to catch me unawares. Yesterday, well, I don't know if I want to start backwards at the bar after dinner, but that was good. Dinner was amazing.
Wait, are you saying the best part was the bar after dinner?
It was definitely a significantly good part of the day.
Let me tell you, I know you're being
incredible.
somewhat funny, but honest to God, I think
somewhat
that's the real
funny?
value.
Excuse me, I work on this.
Yeah. No, I think some of the true value here is this is why, like I'm always talking, like Zoomers, I love you, and you got to get here.
Yeah, look, the in-person experience, look, whether not
so
even pre-COVID, and you know, Jay and I have known each other for the best part of a decade and met networking, and Sujan as well, who's not here, but the networking, being a business owner or a business leader can be a pretty damn lonely business.
Yeah,
you're out there, you're having to make the decisions, you're surrounded by people who are looking to you to have all the answers, and you've got to give the impression that you have them a lot of the time, because that can impact people's confidence in you otherwise. You've got to be careful with that one too, though. And then, you know, it can be really lonely. So to find yourself in a room of strategically minded people that have experienced the same or similar problems than you, that you're one conversation away from having any problem solved, and people really get it. It's not like you're complaining or people go, oh yeah, well look at you, you're the business owner, you know, what do you got to complain about? But actually have people that understand what goes on in your home life when you're sacrificing so much for your business, the challenges that you have with people, the mindset issues you have for yourself, when whether it's imposter syndrome or believing you can't do it, or what should I learn next, or where should I go for information? One of the main reasons that I come, because I'm also a member of the boardroom of advisors, so I'm coming twice a quarter. And part of that, getting away from my everyday life, getting around people, is absolutely key to my well-being on multiple levels, whether it's my mindset, whether it's getting out of the office into a different environment. So yeah, whilst we joke about, you know, hanging out at the bar and building relationships, it is a major part of why I actually come in the first place. Content, obviously, was fantastic yesterday. Of course it was. The digital surveys, absolutely top of the range. The automated text messages that we're getting to remind us where to be, when to be, and why to be, also brilliant automation embracing. Anka was pretty damn cool yesterday. I mean, to be able to have access.
I mean, biggest complaint we got on feedback there was just wasn't enough time, because there was just so much.
You and Dan hogged him. I'm sorry, but that just was not cool. Next time, feedback, guys. Actually give the audience a chance to participate. Thank you.
By the way, maybe we should do that, because we typically, I try to keep an eye on the clock and I go, okay, next 30 minutes. Maybe we should kick that to 45.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, something like that was really valuable, but also the opportunities.
Yeah, I was literally just like, what part of one thing did you not understand?
All right, who's next?
By the way, let me echo her sentiment, because honest to God, I think one of the biggest myths in business ownership, and we all intellectually know this, but we never get it experientially, is like we hear, I'll say this, and you go, yeah, we know that, but how many times do we actually live that? Is that when we're not in environments like this, it's so easy for us to think, nobody gets me. Nobody knows what I'm going through. I'm in this all by myself. And we're not, right? But until you get here and experience it, it's just not the same. Yeah.
Well, it's the legacy as well. Sorry. You know, let alone Dan's been telling me what an idiot I am for many, many years, and then takes great pleasure in saying, I told you so. You know, having breakfast with Mike this morning. So Mike's in my boardroom of advisors, so the history and legacy that we have in the understanding of each other's worlds and business, I would never have met Mike or understood anything about how to run a climbing centre had I not have been here. But that kind of relationship where, you know, those kinds of business colleague friendship things, which are more than business colleague friendships, you're just not going to experience unless you are committed to this kind of work on a long-term basis.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, good job. Give her a hand for the multiple ones. Who else want to share key takeaway, win, interesting distinction? I'd love to hear from you too, since this is your first time. What did you guys think? Are you ready? All right, I'm looking at that Costa coffee cup right there. One of you hold the coffee. There we go. All right, there we go.
Here we go then. Well, we loved it. As you know, we joined like before the first morning break, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, yeah, let's make that. They have officially joined the CEO Mastermind. Yep. Welcome.
Thanks. No, because we knew we needed to be in an environment like this for a long time. Really, it's just a good time for us. I loved all of it, but especially the kind of little group session we had. I'm not sure what that's called. Met some pretty amazing people, some geniuses in the group, really, and just listening to the nuances in their businesses, and you start to get to know people really fast. Like I already feel like I have a connection with those people that were in my group yesterday, so that was like really special. Yeah, enjoyed it.
Awesome.
What about you?
I think just the experience of coming and being amongst really big thinkers and people who are, you know, I think who was it yesterday who said at their funnel they've got like £10 million worth of business and they're missing quite a bit of stuff, and I thought, what a brilliant problem to have, a £10 million problem. I'm aspiring to have a £10 million problem. Yeah. So yeah, it's brilliant to be here and to hear the amazing stuff that's being done by entrepreneurs out there. And as Lisa said, you know, you wouldn't have this opportunity to connect in any other environment. So
yeah, well done. All right, good job. By the way, and regarding the £10 million problem, I'll say this, and I've said this time and time again, is that you will experience a level of wealth in your business to the exact proportional degree that you can handle the problems that go with that amount. And the moment you can't handle the problem that goes with that amount, you will get knocked back down to another level until you learn how to master that problem. And then once you learn how to master that problem, then you go to that next level. So you're right, you should be embracing, I want a £10 million problem, but don't forget you need to have the £10 million capabilities to solve it. And that's, I think that really goes strong here. What else? Any other distinctions? This side of the room is very quiet. Alexis is like, I'll say something. Yep.
Ben's got his hand up.
Oh, all right, we'll just stay over here. Fuck y'all. All right, there we go.
I, following the mastermind, we were in the same one. I sent an email to my team based on the feedback that I got. That was a much better email than I would have sent if it was just from me, but it was.
Oh, so your problem was you needed to draft an email to your team.
Well, no, it was about putting prices up in a business I've just acquired. So, but the email that I sent was much better than it would have been if not for that advice.
If not for that group. Excellent. Yeah, that's great. Well done. Give him a hand. All right, have I humiliated this side to where somebody's going to participate? Tell them what you told me last night about coming to this meeting.
Discuss that
because you're in the board of advisors and you've never missed one of these, I think is what you said.
Oh yeah, that's true. No, it's that we've been to every single one. I've always found it interesting that some people in the board of advisors, to be fair, not my current board of advisors, but I've been in a couple of others during the time we've been a member. Yeah. A lot of people don't come to these, and I didn't get why people wouldn't come to these. Yeah. And even if one of us isn't able to be here, like Chris isn't here this week, obviously Chelsea's here. We've brought.
We knew there was a better energy in the room. I don't know why that.
We brought our whole team to one in end of summer last year. So and that was good again. You know, got things out of it. I think the team got to know as well what we do here and what we get from it. Yeah. Although some of them don't want to come back again. That's not a bad thing. At least they get to know about it and go, actually, yeah, we don't get enough from it for ourselves, but they see what we get from it. Yeah, so it helps us.
Yeah. All right. Andy had to bail out before the wrap up of the negotiation exercise, and he wanted to know what were the key takeaways. So what were the key takeaways that y'all got out of the negotiating for value exercise? What were the aha moments that you got out of that? Or do you still need to get some? Because I could share with you about 12. Yep, all right, here we go. Ready?
So yeah, Georgia absolutely rinsed me in the negotiation. I got minus points. Yeah. So don't assume what's important to you is, you know, it's an even scale. So it's like win or lose. Yeah. So there was a lot of chance to get win-win, and I kind of thought of it as win-lose and tried to meet halfway, and that didn't really pay off.
Yeah. So. Well, and also, I mean, to be fair, yeah, she did clean you up. And the reality is, though, it wasn't the best deal for her because you would have. Were you the business owner or the CEO? CFO?
Business owner.
Yeah. Because now she just milked you for every penny you got, and now you're going to be over demanding on her, wanting her to work longer hours, so maybe it wasn't the best deal, right? You never know. Like, you want to get that match.
I've got a happy employee now, so she's happy to go to work for me. She's got a good package.
Yeah, yeah. All right. I like. Yeah, give him. There we go. Alexis, and you had the highest points. So let's talk about you.
I know Georgia did. Yeah, no, Georgia definitely had the highest scores. Yeah, she calculated. It took a while for her to count them all. I think
is that what it was? Yeah.
When you've made that amount of money, it's, counting it becomes a problem. So no, Georgia got the highest score. I think for myself and Mike, it was it was really about exploring that journey of what do you care most about and what does the other person care most about.
Yeah.
And actually, the more that you can just share that and be open about it, the better.
And just remind us, it tickled me yesterday what you said about how the opening line of the conversation.
Yeah, so that was the I guess the only slightly cynical part of negotiation that I did, which is that when I saw that the job title bit was something that I care less about, and I assumed he would probably care more about, I opened the negotiation with, oh, thanks for... In fact, I opened it with, come into my office, because I'd set up a little office area. Yeah. And so I invited him in.
And he'd elevated his chair.
Yeah.
Oh, little power play.
Sat him slightly on the chaise longue, so that he's slightly uncomfortable as to how you sit down.
Did you have the window behind you with bright sunlight hitting him, so you were just a silhouette?
Got Tina to get him a drink, to my fictitious PA, but I said, I'm so glad you've come. Your CV reads great. We've been looking for a financial supervisor for a while.
Right. Just totally assumed the lowest.
Exactly, and just kind of set some of that, but opening with something that I'm ready to give on, rather than starting with, right, I can't pay more than 120 grand, which I knew would be more painful, perhaps.
Yeah.
So whereas I opening that.
Let's take that and let's chunk that down for a second, because remember when Anker, by the way, give me a good round of applause. Remember, there was a key moment in the interview where I think Anker so simplified what an algorithm is, right? And like, how do we take that and put that into a negotiation algorithm, right? Like a simple algorithm in negotiation, start with the things you're willing to give away. Like if you just make that a part of your algorithm, then you know, okay, well, if I'm going into negotiation, what's my weakest points? What are the things I'm willing to give away? Because if I do that, I'm creating value for them. That's going to create that reciprocity, and I'll be able to get more of what I want later. That's a great algorithm, right? One of the things I was telling Andy this morning is I would chunk it into, like, here's a great algorithm. Identify all the negotiation points. Identify which are the ones you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Identify the ones you have everything to gain and nothing to lose, right? Identify what's the intensity of point value for you. Like how important is this one? How important is this one? How important is this one? Then you go into your meeting knowing exactly what you're willing to give away, what you're not willing to give away, what you're willing to fight harder not to lose for, because even though you logically can think, oh, I don't see a loss as any more intense than a gain. No, you do. You will. It's been proven through behavioral psychology and behavioral economics. We always fight harder to not lose something than we will fight harder to get something. So find out what those things are, because that's your weak point in that negotiation. Have all of that stuff identified. These are algorithms, right? And then you start with the things you're willing to give away to build the value, right? And then before I actually even do that, also take the time to try to elicit from them what are the value intensifier points for those things for them as well. Take the time to just let them talk and tell them how important things are, and then you'll have a much better landscape when you're going in there. And most people just go into a negotiation going, I want this one thing. Maybe you should say, what are the 8 different things I want, or the 5 different things? So yeah, well done. Anything else? Any other key takeaways from yesterday? No? Yep. There we go. Ready?
Hopefully.
Yeah, well done.
It's what Dan said about the power in quitting. I thought that was it's really interesting, because I've been thinking about in my business, like, what things are earning me money, what's the things that we do that we enjoy that are easy, and what are the things we don't enjoy, what things can we cull. But it was more about celebrating the quitting. I thought
Yeah.
we always celebrate, like you said, we all celebrate the things that we do and we change and we improve.
Yep.
We don't very often highlight the good decisions where we quit doing something. So definitely it's a good takeaway for me.
Yeah, again, well done. There's a great book out called Subtract. I just finished this what's funny is I made this as a book of the month for some of my clients, but previously the book of the month before that was Smart Brevity. And you do not want to read Smart Brevity first and then read Subtract, because you're going to get pissed off at the author for not subtracting a lot of stuff from the book that he could have in order to get the point across. But it's a great book, and it talks about a lot of what Dan was referring to, in that what are the things that you should be taking away from your business. And it's not based upon the concept that less is more. That's a different concept, but it's based upon I think it's the Michelangelo's concept or Da Vinci's concept of perfection, where you take away everything that's unnecessary until there's nothing to remove, and then what you're left with is perfection. And it's a really cool book. He's got actually a strategy for how to subtract or how to quit the things that you should be quitting to simplify and glorify the quality of your life. It's a really good, really cool book. Just don't read Smart Brevity first. By the way, that's another great book. All right, let's do this. I've yabbered on long enough. Let's get Dan up here to talk about what's working now, where we're going to bring people up from the audience that have made significant strides in their business, and they have things that they think could work for you as well, so you can pick up some great concepts and ideas from them. So having said that, welcome to the stage, Dan. There we go.
Actually, first of all, impromptu announcement. It's a very special day today, or rather, yesterday was a very special day for somebody in this room. And it's not a birthday. Somebody in this room yesterday achieved something that I know has been a long time aspiration, and will probably hate me drawing attention to him for this. But yesterday, our very own Topher Morrison graduated from Oxford University. Congrats. With a merit, so great job. Well done.
Thanks.
And
thanks.
I can say, because at one point, Topher went, oh, I'm struggling with this financial, this particular module. And I was like, bring it here. I teach this stuff. It was so damn hard. So credit to you, sir. Well done.
Thanks, mate. Thanks.
So, I want to talk about what's working now. First of all, for context, who in this room, by show of hands, the last 12 months, so either in the last year or the last quarter, the last year or the last quarter has been their best ever quarter in terms of revenue, profit, or both? Show of hands. Okay, keep your hands up. All right, look around the room. Okay, so you've probably got what, 50%-ish of the room? So actually, those with your hands up, lean forward, pat yourselves on the back. Okay, and that's the caliber of this group, i.e., if you think about the UK economy and what the UK economy has done in the last 12 months, it's not necessarily something to shout about. And he says in an optimistic way, Faye, I think the future is going to be pretty bleak from an economic perspective, nationally or even globally. But that's why we're in this room. So I want to dive into a couple of examples that stand out to me from our coaching and what we've been diving into as to what's going on. And sometimes, for context, Jay, the biggest wins are losses avoided. They're mistakes, Chelsea, that are corrected, or they're things that are preempted. It's not necessarily always shows up in monetary terms, but they are lessons that I think can be applied to any other business in this room. Okay, so two people that I want to bring up, I'm going to bring them up one at a time. I'm going to ask them questions, and I'm going to give you a chance to ask them questions as well. So first up, please give a warm round of applause to Jacqueline Frost. Best bit about this session is we get to sit down, Jacqueline. So
not going to get thrown at me either.
Yeah, not going to get thrown at you. You get to hold it. It's your very own microphone. So first of all, for context, Jacqueline, could you give us the 30-second pitch, what your business does, and who are you and what does your business do?
Yeah, so a company's called Elevate Talent, and we run our flagship program is called Elevate. It's a global virtual training program aimed at mid-level female professionals. The reason for it is that you probably all see in the press the lack of female leadership. And I think it's 4% of FTSE 100 CEOs are female. There are more CEOs called Peter than there are women or something ridiculous like that. And so, but most companies are focusing on that top level, the leadership level, senior women who are already kind of there. But it's a pipeline issue, it's a numbers game. So if you don't have women coming up through the pipeline, then you're not going to have...
Yes, you're not going to get people at the CEO or the boardroom level if you don't have people in...
Yeah, and they're not moving up, or they're moving sideways, or they're moving out for a whole variety of reasons. And one of the reasons is they're not progressing is because they don't have
some of the skills that they need in order to navigate around, you know, human beings, essentially. You know, that's, people talk about the political climate, but it's just working with people. And there are definitely differences in what's expected from women compared to men, not the way that we operate necessarily, but what's expected. So my time was in investment banking, which is why I do what I do, because I was 20 years in investment banking. I was head of the department. I was the only female head of a department. I was the only married woman on the trading floor. I was the only mother on the trading floor. And so I've kind of got the stripes, so to speak. And people would say to me sometimes, like, oh, oh, why are you not a bit more nurturing? And I'd be like, because I'm not your fucking mother. Sorry, am I allowed to swear? Is that all right?
No, you're not allowed to swear.
Sorry.
It's
Well, I better go.
You better fuck off. No, sorry. So there's a couple of things I want to dive in on. I mean, I really want to dive in on, Jack kind of alluded to it yesterday with regards to lead generation and pipeline and getting data, and solved a massive problem, which gives a huge opportunity, which specifically is about pipeline, Darren. But before we jump to that, your business operates in trimesters, so 4-month periods rather than quarters, just because of the cycle of how Jacqueline's business works. But a handful of trimesters ago, all of a sudden you had a massive step change, like huge, where your business skyrocketed and almost doubled revenue and profit. So before we get into the more recent pipeline stuff, tell us about that step change, because it felt like you kind of plateaued for a while at a certain revenue size, and then all of a sudden it felt like overnight, but I know it wasn't really. So give us the backstory on that.
So I'd had a business partner who fortunately decided to part ways with me in 2018, and she was in charge of business development, and essentially she hadn't been doing much, was the main problem, and I don't think she really believed in the product. So she went, and then I came back to Mastermind, because now I could invest whatever I wanted in the business. It was all mine. And really one of the very first things that you guys did in that very first Mastermind was actually retention and referrals. And so that's what I did. So I got to know the client base that we had. She hadn't been even keeping in touch with them. I started giving them data and reports about attendance, feedback. I mean, every month after every session, there are surveys, there are polls. I mean, we just started to be a data minefield to give to the clients, so they have this information. So they got this monthly,
And what was your belief? What was your belief? What was the intent behind that? Why did you think that was a good idea?
Well, I thought the more that we could show what we were doing and showing the value that we were adding, and we're not just a service where, you send your women to us and we give them a great years of training and 30 to 40% get some sort of promotion that time. We're more than that. We also provide you with the information that you can go to your company and say, look, here's where the gaps are, and here are the problems, this is how we fix them. So really trying to and also really to just demonstrate our authority, that we are very niche players in this market, and we really know what we're talking about. So that's why trust us, because they come to the program, clients can't tell me what we talk about. I've had clients, we had a call recently, the client said, oh, I want to talk about, what we covered in the year that we'll send our women to you. I was like, no. And he's like, no, but I want to make sure you cover. I'm like, no, I will tell you what we cover when we cover it. That's how it works. You sign up to it, you trust me with it all, and that's how it works, and we'll give you the results. So it was really to just demonstrate that authority, but also to just build the relationship, because my business partner really had the relationships with the clients, I didn't. And so to really build that relationship up.
So what would you say to the people in this room? Because there's some people might be sat here thinking of what you just said tactically and going, well, I don't run a training business, so, I don't give them feedback. How would you translate that? What would your recommendation be for people here from maybe the question is, might they think about using data to help aid retention or repeat business?
Well, I mean, I think that people love data and they love research, and I realised that, some of my competition were all the kind of academics coming out with this research and this information, and some of it you look into it and they've got 250 women and I've got 1,000. I'm thinking, how can they put more weight on that?
How can that be data?
Yes, exactly.
Research, yeah.
And it's 2 years old and mine's last month. So it was like, so it's more that kind of looking at your competition, see what they're doing and what they're getting credit for, and thinking, well, I can do that and a lot better and more recent. So I think it's just, just seeing what your competition doing, and then I think we had this conversation, didn't we, with Ben yesterday, wasn't it? It's like, what are your competition doing in your new business? and what are they doing, and then basically just make it slightly better.
Yes.
So that, you know, it doesn't even have to be massively better, just make it slightly better so that it's more compelling. So rather than reading that stuff, they're reading your stuff.
Yeah, I remember a classic book, which if you've not read, needs to be added to your read list, is probably, well, any book in the series of this author who's passed away now, J. Conrad Levinson, who wrote the Guerrilla Marketing series. But in that book, he talks about, so it's aimed at small business owners, kind of grassroots marketing stuff. But one of the things he says, Jensen, is that 50% of your marketing activity should be directed to your existing customers. And I love that, because people almost think like it's a silo, it's a separate thing. But of course, you're selling to your existing customers to keep them engaged, right? Because you might give value, but it's their perception, you know, so value is in the eye of the beholder. So it's their perception of the value. So you're reselling them, which on being engaged in the program, seeing the value, so there'll be repeat business and referrals, etc. So you added in this data piece. What happened? So what is that? What caused this step change, or what? How did you realize when it was working?
Well, I mean, so what was really nice was all the emails started getting back from clients saying, oh, this is really interesting. And then I'd say, if you have any questions you'd like to ask, we can put them into sessions or put them into surveys, so we can maybe find out some information you want. And then, in actual fact, nobody's asked me yet, which is great, because I hate having to be told what to do.
Right.
But, you know, it's great. So, so from that perspective, they opened the door for them to share their knowledge, but actually they didn't, and they didn't actually ask anything. And so, and then from that, what was really neat was that one of our clients asked me, could she forward the report to another company, because she thought they'd be interested. And of course, I had to think about that one.
Right.
But
Because the client's saying, yeah, can we forward the report that you create for us on our data? To,
and I was like, well, as long as you're, so therefore, so she shared it, and within 4 months, that company became a new client. So it was all the referral stuff again that, it was just the first session. I was sat over somewhere here, and I had big words, retention, referrals. That's what I went back with.
Yeah, and they were entwined. So the strategy for retention, which was the surveys and the data and feeding back to the clients to keep them engaged.
And then what it opens, it was opened up an excellent dialogue, because then one of the clients came back and they had specific issues that they'd had with the program, which I knew nothing about. And they're like, oh, we would send more women, but we can't because of A, B, and C. And I was like, well, we can do A, B, and C. And they were just shocked. They were like, really? Well, we've been asking for this for a while, and I knew nothing about it, because it was more of an operational side of an issue that they needed solving. And I was like, no. So then they went from being, so we've got entry points January, May, and September to join. They went from joining only in January to having a cohort in both May and September.
Yeah, so 3 cohorts.
So so all of 100. So they went from 100 licenses to 300 licenses.
Yeah, so not only did you retain clients, but you also increased the revenue from the existing clients, repeat business or higher transaction size.
I just did what you guys told me to do. You pointed me in the right direction, and I went for it. No, I really did. I was on a mission, an absolute mission, and that was it. So we got referrals.
So how long did this kind of 80%, almost doubling of the business, what period of time was that over?
So COVID slightly got in the way, which I think probably did for most people. So I think this kicked off, what year is it now? I want to say September 21. Am I right there? Because hang on, I'll know by the financial year, don't I? Because my year goes May to, so it'll be May 21. So to May 21 to 22, that year compared to the previous year.
Right, that 12-month window.
Yeah.
I love it. Fantastic. Well, first of all, 8% increase in revenue and profits. Round of applause, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
So bring us now into the present. So not everybody was in the room yesterday. Let's just have a recap first. So you've had a significant, radical increase in pipeline, top of the funnel stuff, to not just getting leads, but also getting data. So what happened there? What was the inflection point?
So the other challenge we had was that I hadn't put the price ups in 2016 when we launched, but new companies I was charging an awful lot more when they were coming in.
So the old people were grandfathered in, and the new people.
But they were really, it was serious, because I was trying to put the price up bit by bit by bit.
And what was the discrepancy?
About 30%.
Right, okay.
So it's a big difference. And so I realised we had to put our prices up, and also we'd had that conversation about putting prices up in Jan 2020. Because again, my former business partner wouldn't have the conversation on price. She said, oh no, they won't pay any more, we'll lose the client, so she wouldn't have it. So in Jan 2020, I was like, okay, now I've had enough time getting to know these clients, I know them, I feel now I can engage. And so I thought, I think what we'll do is we'll talk about the price point, and May's always slightly lower on numbers compared to January and September. Okay. So I thought, if I tell them all that May's the last lower price, we might get a bump for May 2020. And just as I was doing all that, COVID was on. Well, it was kind of mid-February, and I was feeling a bit nervous. I thought something's around the corner, this does not feel good. And so held off. So of course, we'd wanted to put the price up in 2020, and now we're sitting January 22, 2 years later, thinking, when's this going to end? When can we do it? So came to, I think it was the March SMM when Dan, trying his name again, the guy that does Score App. Dan Priestley. And he was talking about Score App, and I was thinking, this is how we do it, because we start talking about the value we're going to add and what's new, what's around the corner. So we talked about the scorecard. So when people register, they fill the scorecard and they get their own personal report of where they are. And
so just for context, for those who don't know, Score App is a piece of software that allows you to create scorecards. So it's a lead generation tool that collects data.
Yeah. And all the formula that we use, which is all trademarked now, is called the EPIC formula. And the whole point is having an epic career, and who doesn't want to be epic? And, you know, so it's the EPIC career scorecard, but EPIC stands for exposure, performance, impact, and conscious. So they're graded on each one. And each grade, you get 4 grades. You are a star, obviously, if you're doing really, really well. You're strong if you're the next level down. You're steady, the next one down. And the lowest one's actually stationary. And the whole concept around that is that what you're doing is fine, but it's not moving you forward. And it's about knowing what the techniques and strategies you need to do to actually progress your career. Because you don't want to put, you know, excellent and really shit, do you, on your scorecard? Oh, you're doing really, your career's shite, go home now, do you know what I mean? So you don't want to do that. So the whole idea is to keep it positive. The whole thing around what we do is all positive. It's about what you can do, about being in control, you know, channeling your own unique abilities, all that stuff. So we want to make the scorecard very positive. And so everybody would fill it in, and everybody did fill it in when they registered. So 100% of people when they registered in September filled it in.
I love it. Now, put a pin in that. I'm going to come back to, I just missed something I want to look back on. What would your thoughts be? So, going back to price. There are external events, which when you put off the price increase, you then use the future price increase as a way of getting a bump, i.e. giving people an incentive, a reason to act now. What would your words of wisdom be? So if you could rewind the clock, would you have done anything differently? Would you have raised it sooner? What would your advice be to people in the room? Because I'm sure there are multiple people in this room that kind of have been thinking for some time about their pricing.
I think to me, well, there's lots of ways, isn't it, about doing the pricing, and you've got different. I mean, you know, it's one of those things that when you start looking at the price, how do I change the price? You suddenly see all around you. Was it Bader-Meinhof phenomenon? You start to see it everywhere, don't you? Right. What you're doing, and so I started to see how are companies coping with the fact that we have got you know, have gone a year now of inflation. Prices are going up. Prices are going up on us as business owners. You know, if your business is, you know, very fuel intensive, obviously the petrol's more expensive, etc., etc. And so I started looking around about how do we do this without losing customers and without people saying, okay, I'll just reduce the number of licenses, because that's not a great game either, is it? You might be getting the same amount of money, but you've got fewer people, you've got fewer data points, all that kind of stuff. And the supermarket way of doing it is now your bag of rocket salad. That's a real first world problem, isn't it? When your bag of rocket salad was 90 grams and now it's 75. And it's still £1.10. But you know what I mean there? So that's how they do it. Restaurants do it by bringing out a whole new menu and just putting the price up. So whatever chicken dish was on the menu last month has changed completely. And yes, that was £12.95, now it's £14.95. They do it that way. And actually what it was that I kept on looking at was actually Sky TV. So I got an email from Sky about a year ago about renewing my package with them. And if I did, and it was slightly more expensive, but I got Netflix free, and they were going to bringing out soon Paramount Plus, because I'm a Sky Cinema, I've got Sky Cinema, and I'm a VIP, so I get all this stuff. And so I was watching, I was like, they're just adding into stuff. Where
it's just bundling.
Yeah, and they're making it look like a much more attractive package. Now, we have to have Sky Sports because my husband's a massive Man City fan, and that would be divorce if I didn't have. It would be like, no, out. And we've got BT Sport because they sometimes play on there. We've got Amazon because they sometimes play there. Do you know what I mean? So wherever Man City are playing, we've got to have.
Yes.
access.
Yes,
Really important thing.
tie back your husband's football obsession with the price increase. So what does this mean for these guys? How would it be? Are you saying you should look to raise prices, but do it in the context of bundling? What would you?
Yeah, you could. I mean, it's just how you do it, and it's just basically making sure that your value, what you're offering, is that they see they're getting more value from what. So you're putting the price up, but this is what you're going to also get. This is what you're also going to win.
And did you get much resistance?
Well, no, actually. But it was really interesting because I actually found out from one of my clients, and I was really cross when I found this out actually, was that they have an increase that they actually give suppliers every year. And it's been going on for years. And so when I went to them with the increase, they were very quick to say, they're a Swedish company, they're very quick to say, oh, no, you can't do that, but we can put it up. So I tried to put it up by theirs, I tried to put it up by 15%. And then came back and said, no, we give suppliers this increase, whatever else. And I was like, okay, what's this year's increase? And he said, oh, I'll have to come back to you. And now it was 8%. But that's fine, because we'll just do 8% again next year.
Yes, but you're annoyed because you missed out on 3 or 4 years of 8% increases, because presumably they were tying it to inflation or something.
Well, they would somehow or other, yes, exactly. So I don't know, but certainly, again, they only became a client, I think, in 2019.
Okay.
So I haven't missed out on that many, but I have missed out. So I was like, damn it, I didn't realise that. So again, that's a conversation that now I know that that's a thing in Sweden. I've got 2 clients in Sweden.
Yeah.
So
I think that for me, one thing I take away from that, which I think is for everybody in this room, is price increases little and often. Right, as in little and often, rather than once in a while being very, very dramatic with a significant price increase. I'm far more in favour of the more regular incremental ones. It's less likely to be dramatic. So I'm going to throw it over to the audience because I realised I was going to start asking loads of questions about the pipeline. But you've generated a huge volume of new leads with a tremendous amount of additional data points. So well, I'll ask one question. Well, actually, Lisa's already got a hand up, so I won't ask a question while they think of questions. I'll pass it to Lisa. I've just realised it's not going to work with the throwing backwards and forwards.
So we'll do a little
You'll have to shout
ping-pong.
at me, Jackie.
So, it was actually, I just wanted to rewind to 2018 for a minute, when this particular part of your journey started, and ask the question of, once you'd managed to successfully exit undesired business partner from the scene, is how quickly you slingshot back into success mode of that kind of like, oh, I can breathe, I can do it. And, all the new ideas and all the ways that you were able to embrace the business growth finally. The mindset around that whole, how much were you released to be able to make those decisions and the new role that you were taking on because of what your ex-business partner were doing. And if you contribute this round of success, not just because they weren't in the scene anymore, but because of who you became as a result.
Very eclectic question.
Sorry, it was. Yeah, no, it was just because I've been through similar. It's just like that. Yeah.
Could you condense it down?
Okay. How much of the growth is as a result of subtracting something that was clearly quite toxic in your life?
Good.
Yeah, it was definitely a big part of it. But I think so it was great to get rid of her because it was just a drain of energy the whole time, and it was just constant battling negativity. And one of my, I don't know if I was sharing this with you yesterday, but one of my favourite moments with her was we were discussing an issue that we were trying to resolve to do the business about a way forward. And then at the end of it, when we were agreeing with what I was thinking we should do, her point was, the thing is, there's no point me ever speaking to you because you're so much more articulate than I am, I'll never win. And I was like, what? So it's my fault that you're not articulate, do you know what I mean?
Or even that she's in competition with you in the first place.
Yeah, it was just bizarre. So it's all those things that, and of course those stick in your head, don't you? And you kind of mull up the rest of the day and you kind of, just want to go around and punch your lights out.
No, I was going to say, are we allowed to say that?
Okay, very good.
So yes, that was a big part of it. But the other part of it was I then didn't know where to direct my energy and time. And that was where I sat for quite a while thinking, I now could do what I want. What the hell do I do? Yeah, and that's when I came here. Yeah.
That's good. Good question. Other thoughts, questions? Jen, yep. Go for it, Giles.
So if you, I can't remember the exact metrics, but you doubled your turnover, doubled your profits in the space of the 12-month period. So you either had capacity before, or to Topher's point, if you double the size of your business, have you had to restructure to cater for all that, or was it that you had spare capacity before? Because I'm very different businesses, but in mine, if I doubled turnover and hopefully profits, it would be a complete shit show unless I completely changed the fundamentals of the business and hired loads more people.
Just for context, tell everybody what your business is, Charles.
So we're a commercial interior fit-out contractor. So yeah, so our turnover does fluctuate and we can increase quickly, but we have to get the team around us to enable us to deliver that turnover. So I'm just thinking for you, have you had to hire loads of people, or has it created loads of problems, or how have you sort of managed the rapid increase?
How did you handle the capacity?
It's a really good question, and so the business that I run now is kind of a second go at the same idea I had back in 2011, and it was built to scale. Because the one thing that I learned having come to the mastermind first time around was that all I was doing was exchanging time for money, and I wanted to get off that treadmill of time for money. So as a training company, I actually only do 2 hours of training a month. And everybody comes onto those 2 hours. So all 1,200 women who are part of the program at the moment come onto those 2 hours. And that's all that gets done. And people will call up and will want bespoke sessions. And I just can't be bothered, can I? I get asked to do things, especially around International Women's Day. I was like, oh, sorry, I'm away skiing.
So
I don't do anything that's
for
just
anybody,
that model.
Jacqueline, who's here, who's feels they're still stuck in that time for money trap. What would your any key points you'd ask them to consider?
Well, I think if you're already doing that, I mean, I think that I probably went from one extreme to the other because I completely decided I wasn't going to do any of that stuff, and I still do some coaching, but not much, deliberately, because I don't want to be spending my time doing that. But the coaching feeds the stories, which feeds the sessions, which gives me data points and that kind of ideas. So it is kind of quite symbiotic. But I would say that carry on what you're doing, but rather than try to grow what you're doing, look at ways that you could be scaling and have a kind of a scaling. So you kind of got your bread and butter business on one side and you've got something else on the other. Because I did go completely cold turkey on it, which I don't really recommend. But I just so believed in the whole concept, and I thought, well, if we don't do it this way, then we're never going to get off the ground.
No, you're not the type of person to tiptoe in gently.
No,
when you can
shove in the deep end.
Right. Very good, very good. Any final questions for Jacqueline? Yep.
My goodness, I'm going to get better at that. As you know, Jacqueline, we've got an online program as well, so a little bit similar to kind of what you're doing. You mentioned with the price increase that you bundled to increase the value, but obviously you're quite conscious that you don't want to give more. You don't want time for money exchange. You don't want to give more and more of your time. So how did you increase the value for your clients without giving them more and more of you?
Good question. Great question.
So the first, which I've talked about, was the rolling out the scorecards. So the individual women themselves get a report at the start and the end, and also we can therefore give the client a lot more data points on what they actually did with one of the clients on the questions that we asked for them to check in that they were happy and they agreed the questions were the right way of doing it. And so they now get, for each person joining and leaving, there's 25 questions that we can then put the data together. And that data is really interesting, actually. It's really interesting. And then we then use that to show what we're going to do in the program and why we're doing it that way, because the questions that are being answered a certain way leave us with the information that we need to make the program really bespoke. So they see they're getting an even more bespoke program. That's one thing. Second thing is we have a members hub where all the replays were, and I look back and some of the stuff was so basic. I just think, why did these big companies, they must have thought this is a really amateur hour. So we've upgraded that. We've got a new members hub. It looks stunning. It's beautiful. And they could get their scorecard there. They can get we've got the book club in there. There's loads more in there. It's also, they're able to change their session times if they want to. There's a lot more they can do. And we're building that out a bit more as well as time goes on. So actually the clients themselves can go in and be able to get their own data of how many people have joined that session that month, and they'll get the feedback, so it'll be much more automated for them as well, because they've got to wait for us to send them the reports. So that'll be better for them. And then the third thing that we're just launching actually this month are Elevate Ambassadors. So women who are on the program become ambassadors. You know, they talk about more things on LinkedIn. They'll get a 3 years membership when their membership currently ends. They'll get so this is the one thing I did capitulate on, actually. So every other month, the ambassadors will have a action call with me about, you know, what they actually can take action on from the sessions. And that'll be 6 times a year. So they'll probably have to do 2 or 3 of those because it won't be enough to do just one session. So that's what I did capitulate on, to giving them value. And every single one of the clients loves the ambassadors. And it made me laugh yesterday because I got an email in from one of our really big clients. They've got 80,000 people worldwide. And she said, oh, I love the ambassador idea. How much is it going to cost us?
I love it.
And it's like, and it's free. It's free. So we wrote back
maybe it shouldn't be.
Well, that's what I was thinking, damn it, I've done it again. But no, and I was like, no, it was free. And she went, oh, this is brilliant. We're getting so much great response on this. But the idea of it, though, is free marketing. That's what we want out of it, the brand, the marketing, you know, for others to come out and see what we're doing and think, oh, what's all this about? So nothing better than somebody else talking about how brilliant you are, isn't there? So
wonderful, wonderful. And we've been talking about how brilliant she is. Give a round of applause for Jacqueline Frost.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, he needs no introduction because after Lisa, he's the second most big hogger of the microphone. Give it up for Mr. Alexis Kingsbury. There you are, sir.
You've made Lisa very happy.
For the half a person that doesn't know Alexis, tell us about, give us the brief summary, give us the 10-second pitch for Spider Gap and Air Manual.
Sure. So, hi there. I'm Alexis. I have a couple of software businesses and a consulting practice. One of my software businesses that I spend most of my time on at the moment is called Air Manual, where we solve a problem that's common for a lot of sort of small, medium-sized businesses, which is how do you provide the guidance to your teams on processes, the onboarding, you know, how to get stuff done. Because if you don't provide that, you get repeated mistakes, it's hard to delegate, and your best people, including yourself, spend all your time training people, and it takes a lot of time. So with Air Manual, we created a platform, a tool, software tool, and an approach that makes it easy to fix this. So as a result, we save business leaders, including some in this room, hundreds of hours of their time. We stop the repeated mistakes, and we make it possible to onboard team members in days rather than weeks and months and so on.
So I'm going to start by throwing you a curveball. Not what we spoke about, we were going to speak about. It just occurred to me.
Sure.
So, which I think is helpful, given the context Topher was talking about with regards to subtraction. So you had Spider Gap.
Still got Spider Gap, yeah.
Well, yeah, so, but going back in time, you had Spider Gap, working well, growing company, profitable. SaaS businesses typically take a while to get traction. For historically, the long time when it was kind of on the edge and then it broke through, started churning out profit, great model, built in a recurring model, fantastic. I know what I'll do. I'll start up another new SaaS business in a completely different niche.
Yeah.
What was the...
No, I see the logic too, yeah.
Yeah, well, quite. So what was the slightly unhinged logic behind that decision?
Yeah, so I guess there are a few things. So I guess one at a personal level, particularly for my co-founder, but I felt it a bit too, was that with Spider Gap, we were solving a problem. So for those that don't know, it's a 360-degree feedback tool. So it's typically purchased by heads of HR to support the personal development of employees within organizations. And so while that's something that I'm passionate about, I believe that growth personal growth is an absolute critical component of happiness, and therefore being able to support that in organizations I think is really important. I think it certainly didn't set a light my co-founder. And so for him...
And just for context, so there's the two of you, that are 50-50 shareholders.
Bootstrapped all the way through. Yeah.
And Paddy, your co-founder, it made me laugh. Emma posted in one of our company WhatsApp the other day. She was like, Paddy really exists because Paddy's the programmer. And so we've heard about Paddy for 7 or 8 years, but nobody's actually ever even seen him in the flesh. But apparently he exists. Emma met him last week.
Yeah.
So,
and he'd hate being called the programmer.
Yeah.
He'd.
Well, he's not here to defend himself.
Well, exactly. He'd say, "I'm CEO," and we'd all go, "Yep, yeah, you absolutely are." And the fact that Emma doesn't believe that you exist, that's irrelevant. Yeah.
So sorry, I interrupted you. I just wanted to give context to Paddy. So, personal growth, Paddy's aspirations.
Yeah. Yeah, and so for him, I think he'd see himself as more of an inventor and wanted to create more things and not have Spider Gap as being the only thing he ever created.
Just tweaks.
Which is fair enough. And so...
It works for Zuckerberg.
Well,
Paddy.
yeah. So,
or not work for Zuckerberg, maybe.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I think there was definitely a personal element there around wanting to do another thing and also to do something that perhaps was a bit more in the tech space. We call it scratching your own itch. You know, something that you're solving a problem that you've faced yourself. And so Air Manual was a natural fit for that because it was solving something that we'd experienced ourselves, like trying to grow the team, trying to give them the guidance, trying to onboard people, and all of that pain. And I'd talk to people like in this room, like I've been part of your programs at some point or another, well, consistently for 9 years. And so people would say, well, so how are you doing this? Like, you seem to be really good at sorting this out. And I'd say, well, I can show you how I do it, but I'm not sure I'd recommend you do it this way because I'm having to use like 3 or 4 different tools and put it together like this, and you don't like it. So that was the nice thing about building Air Manual when we set off to create it, was we're creating something that solves a real problem that we've experienced ourselves, that we've had to solve, but in a messy way, and now we can provide it and really help people. And I think for me, my passion around it comes because I'm obsessed by like, how do you make business more enjoyable, less stressful? How do you avoid working like 60-hour weeks? How do you avoid like working weekends or being disrupted while on holiday and not being able to spend time with your family and all that kind of stuff? And like, you know, those of you that know me for a while know that I've spent years like talking about that kind of stuff. And so this was the big opportunity to actually help people solve it in their business.
So what would you say, because I want just to tease the audience a bit, that you've done a really great job at smashing, in radically improving your sales conversion rate. That's what I want to ask Alexis about. But so last question before we transition there. For anybody that's in this room, given this is almost like a juxtaposition of we're talking about subtracting, taking away the unnecessary, the superfluous to have you know, the Michelangelo concept is helpful. But then you've given an example of going, there's serial entrepreneurs in this room that go, one business, why have one business when you can have 7? So what question would you encourage them to think about, or any thoughts or principles that you'd encourage them to reflect on if they're weighing up that decision? Do I diversify or do I condense?
Yeah, so it's a complex picture, and so I think there's a few things which I'll sort of touch on. So one is timing is important. So where you've got the business to does matter. If you're in that difficult product market fit stage, that's not the time to shift. It'll just die. And we had got SpiderGap to a point that I was just putting in essentially a COO who was going to run the whole thing. I had got to a point where I'd got all my finance processes documented. That was one of the last things that I handed over because I quite liked it as a lever on the business. So I hired a finance administrator and passed that over to her. I got my HR stuff passed over. Like, I was able to basically let go of all the day-to-day. But arguably, I did part of that as I shifted to Air Manual being, you know, when it was just an idea and we didn't know it was going to work, it's like, well, I don't need to shift. And then when it started to show promise, it's like, okay, yeah, let's hire an administrator in to cover this and hire this. And so quite quickly, in a period of a few months, I managed to completely remove myself from SpiderGap day to day. And now my only role is really coaching the exec team and coaching them on the strategy as well now. I don't even provide the first version of the strategy. They do all that, and we've just gone through it while I've been here. So that was key, the timing of it. I think also in terms of your motivation for why you're going to do the next thing. I think if you're just bored, I think that's a risk, because then there's a risk that you're just going to atrophy on the other business, and you'd be better off working out why that is and tapping into it and maybe exiting it or whatever. Yeah. And so I think there's a motivation piece. Yeah, and then what are you going to do next, I think is important. I think if you're just doing another thing because it's shiny or because you think it's really zeitgeisty, that's dangerous.
Like AI, for instance.
Like AI, yeah. I mean, you guys know I literally have written a business leader's guide to AI and ChatGPT, and yet I would warn heavily against suddenly going, right, oh yeah, I'm going to create an AI tool in the same way as I was talking to people last night. You remember when there was a time where you could pay for an app on your Apple phone for torch, to have a torch, right? You remember that? Imagine what that, for the sales of that app must have gone down a lot, because now it's on the phones. And of course, there'll be that journey with AI.
Somebody was on a recurring subscription.
Yeah, it's like, oh, damn it, £1 a month. It's a good job I go in a lot of dark places. No. Emotionally.
I feel we're getting off track.
Yeah, sorry.
Let's jump forward. So, because I want to hand it over for questions. So, the sales conversion rate.
Yes.
You've done a couple of tweaks that have significantly improved it. So, what is it? I know it's relatively young, so small sample size, but approximately what has been this increase in leads to sales conversion rate? What's it gone from and to? And then what are some of the key takeaways? And then I'm going to throw it over for audience questions.
Sure. So with our previous sales process, I was pretty happy with it and got to the point where I felt like I did the numbers, and it's about a third of the discovery calls that we were having.
So what was the process? It was leads come in via paid traffic to lead magnet to discovery call. What was the?
Yeah, so a few different lead sources. A lot of it was networking or speaking at events and things like that. And so, but then the first major step was that they arrange a discovery call with initially me, but then I grew the team. So a member of the team to explore whether Air Manual's a good fit and demo the tool. And so I was pretty happy.
Discovery call was the demo, and then so it was just lead to demo to sale.
Well, ideally, except it never played out that way. So we'd always have follow-up calls, and so follow-up call, and then maybe a sale. And I was kind of okay with that. Like that felt, a third of all the people that came through that route would end up being customer. Okay, 30 to 40% feels a good target, and I've spoken to people in the space, and that's good. But the thing that was really frustrating me was that series of calls. I was feeling like, we're not closing the conversation. We're just leaving it open all the time. We need to be closing it. And so I started working on the process, and I attended some kind of sales training sessions. And one of the big concepts that came across was certainty. Like certainty sells. You need to have a really clear thing for someone to buy. And often the problem that we were having is that someone would say, okay, so what's the price? And you go, well, it depends on this, and it depends on that. And they say, oh, can I get help doing this? And we go, oh, well, yes, and I'll do you a bespoke proposal. I'll send you an email afterwards. And so this process just kind of became elongated and delayed. And so when I attended the sales training, it was kind of like certainty sales, you need to be really clear. One of the things that came up is you need a brochure. And as a tech business, we're like, surely we don't need a brochure. We're an online tech business. You don't go and get a brochure for like Slack, so surely we don't need it. Anyway, here's our brochure. So, because I'm always happy to be wrong, of course, as we've shared often. So we created this brochure, and it's been amazing. So one of the first things that happens by having this brochure is, firstly, you've got something to send to them before they have the call. Right. And, it's big. It's like 32 pages.
Just to draw it out, and you are physically mailing or giving them that brochure. Why? So someone would definitely say, well, why would you not just give them a PDF?
Oh, no, they initially, and most, it's a PDF. Like, this only exists in paper copy because we did an event last week. Okay. But it raises an interesting question. Should we be mailing it?
100% you should test that.
Yeah.
I will tell you from first-hand experience, albeit it was a business of mine many years ago, that I don't have any longer, that when I split test, hands down, the physical kick the ass of the digital.
Cool. Yeah.
Because what happens with this when it turns up at your house? Like it lies around on your bedroom, bedside table, in the dining room, in the kitchen, on the side. It's like it's a much more constant reminder when all the PDFs that you download, where are they?
Yeah,
who knows?
It's true.
In the downloads folder.
It's all right, that's yours now for your side table.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So, so we did create it online, and we send it out in advance. And, some of my team, when we first created it, said, there's no way people will read this. It's like 31 pages long. It's like, but some did. And some read some of it, and some skim read, and some skipped to customer stories. And so it's really interesting the number of people that would come like pretty prepped, which that's the first thing that made a big difference. The second thing was it shortened the it shortened the first call. So previously, to demo Air Manual, we'd have to open up the tool and show them through it and walk them through it and so on. Whereas with a brochure, I can literally talk them through the key screenshots and so on the page without having to navigate and so on. And you can jump really quickly from, you know, if they've got a question about this, I can jump over there. And also, if at any point they've got quite an elongated question, like, oh, why can't I just use SharePoint? We can point to the fact there's a question in our FAQs about that. We can give the high-level answer and then say, but it's all in the brochure. And so as a result, I don't need to give the...
Well, I love this for two reasons. One is, talk about my buying process here, but I imagine it's reflective of many of the people in this room. Like, if I get that, I will skim it, and certain things will hook me. I was like, oh, I like that. Exactly. So I'm now prepped for the call, which is leverage for them, for the person doing the call. I'm now straight into, tell me about this, because there are certain hot points or features that will hook me that won't be of interest to Chelsea and vice versa, right? And then, the second one jumped out of my head, but it was something to do with the objection. So the objection. So if you're buying for a team, so I have with Air Manual, you go, okay, great, well, I can be convinced, but now I've got to relay to Stephen why it's a good idea that he uses it in his department. And then he'll ask me a question, and I'll go, oops, or, yeah, Alexis did say why we should do it, not SharePoint, and I'll do a really poor job of regurgitating what Alexis said, when I can actually go, no, here it is, it's all here. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's written, it's in the, I'm calling it a manual now. It's not a manual, it's a brochure. But yeah, it's in the manual, right?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, absolutely spot on. So a big part of the changes that we made to the process were having the brochure, having the content in it. But then the next thing was, how do we now get the team who'd been doing it, sales in a particular way, how do we get them to shift over to using the brochure and be able to close the sale conversation much better than they had. And so, as you might expect, given the nature of our business, we created that as our training checklist and created our updated checklist of like how to run a discovery call. And it was the awesome thing was we literally just one day we said, right, and we did it in turn. We said, okay, Jessica, you know, we've blocked you out from discovery calls, so on a Monday you're now not doing any discovery calls. Today is your day to do the switchover. And so she followed the checklist, she read the process, she walked it through, she did a role play, and by Tuesday she was doing the new process with customers.
Good.
And so then a few days later, we then got Kangai switched over as well, and that was it. And
so you got your 2 reps switched over. So jump me ahead to the end. At what point did you go, actually, this is working? Because it was just a theory.
Yes. Right? Yeah, at that point, arguably, it's a theory. It felt plausible that, you know, it would be improved, and it felt better and the various things, but it was still just a theory. And so, but anecdotally, as soon as the first few calls happened, we saw the shift. The first thing that we saw was how much quicker people would make the decision and close. Like a good example is I spoke at Expert Empires on Friday last week, and we had a load of calls arranged as a result of that.
So you spoke on stage, 500 people.
We had 25 arranged discovery calls and a further 190 leads.
Great.
And we've had, I think, as of last time I looked at the data, we'd had 6 of those calls, and 3 had immediately converted, like from one call.
Yes.
And
from the first call.
First call.
What was it historically? What was the average number of calls or the average length of time?
Average 3, 4.
3 or 4 calls? Great. Over what time period would that be? Would that be?
Oh, weeks. You know, like, it's the funny thing. It's like our customer, our ideal customer, what have they got in common? They're busy. Like, all of them are busy. They're all busy business leaders that are like, oh, I need to free up my time. And so, of course, even getting them on the call that they've booked is hard enough. And, of course, when you then have to book another one, they go, oh, well, next week's not good for me, and it becomes 2 weeks. So literally, like 3, 4 calls, it's probably 2 months to getting up to 3 months. Lag time.
That was my experience as a customer, Air Manual customer. It was multiple calls, and it definitely would have been a couple of months, easily.
And so, whereas now we've like converted 50% of the calls that we'd had so far within 2 days, and the remaining ones are just they're like confirming at the moment, like just, I need to speak to, confirm with this.
So what's your belief about that? So the length of time has radically decreased. So let's say it's gone from 4 calls down to 1. So it's a 75% reduction in time. If it were possible to have consistent lead volume, you've just 4x your sales. If you just think about that logically, if you could have consistent lead volume, you'd 4x your sales if it takes a quarter of the time in which to make the sale, right? But what's happened to the conversion rate? So it was about a third, 33%. What does this new format look like?
I'd say we're now closer to 2/3. And as I say, with the 6 that we've had so far from that event, at the moment we haven't had a no. We haven't even had a, it's all at the moment, all of those 6, and that's a small sample size, but I can go back because we've been doing that process for a bit longer. It's looking like it's double.
So just get your head around this, and I'm going to throw it over to questions, because the key, Neil, is how does this apply to your business? How could this apply to your sales process? So if those things were true, and again, full disclosure, it's early days, but it's looking very promising. You're talking about reducing the length of time to sale, Liam, by 75%. You're talking about doubling, or something increasing by 50% the conversion rate, right? So you're talking about, depending on where exactly it lands, those two things compound. A higher conversion rate and a speedier conversion rate. You're talking about an 8x increase in sales potentially there, simply from optimizing this process. Okay, so, well, first of all, I think that deserves a round of applause. Questions, thoughts, comments? Yep, go for it, Sonia.
Alexis.
Hi, Sonia.
Hello, it's great to hear how well Air Manual's going and those shifts. And I just want to literally hog this mic and mine you for information now. I won't, or stop me if I do. Yeah, I got there first, Lisa. But I'm really interested, you kind of talked through how you've got your team trained up, and it's kind of like, oh yes, we set up the process, they had a day and they're on it. And I'm like, well, how did you work out the process? Because obviously you've got an old way of doing things. How did you go about understanding how you were going to do this with the new brochure?
Yeah, great question. So I guess there's 2 main parts of that. So one is, what should be the process on the call? So we knew from what we do before, it's like, well, you need to introduce the call, establish rapport, agree how long this call is going to take, check your recording, that's the initial thing. Then you need to provide a very quick summary of what you provide, just to provide context for the conversation, particularly if someone's brought in people that, sometimes it happens that a business leader joins the call and goes, oh, I brought my number 2, and they're like, I have no idea why I'm here. So it's useful to set that up. And then it's all questions. It's asking them about their business. And one of the critical things for us is it's all about impact. It's our number 1 core value, is focus on impact. And when you all get the brochure at airmanual.link/discover, then yeah, thank you. You'll see, like we talk about impact and life-changing impacts and so on. So for us, the questions are all around that. It's, what's the pain at the moment? What's the impact that it would have if you could free up your time?
Right, so classic consultative sell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so we're asking all those questions, and so we have those in the checklist, and we have text boxes that my team can capture that as it goes along. And then it switch over to, okay, do we think this is a good fit? Yes or no? And if we do, then we explain why, and we then demonstrate the tool. And if not, we explain why and go for an alternative. There you go, Lisa. That's okay. Yeah. It's one way of doing it. So you'd have you'd then provide a demo to explain those things, and then show how you can work with us and close the conversation. Now, most of that existed already. The difference was that, firstly, some of the questions did change, because even the process of creating this helped us really dial into what matters. The next thing was that even capturing the stories meant that we wanted to embed the stories more into the discovery call. And then the other thing was, okay, now how do we demo the tool without demoing the tool? Because as soon as you do demo the tool, it's like, that's going to be 20 minutes, half an hour of clicking around and so on. And so instead it was, how do we show the team how to use this to do that instead? So that was in the checklist, like, how do you do this? And so I tested it myself and practiced it initially with team members, and then with friendlies, like friendly customers that are up for doing that, and got comfortable that, yep, this will work. So that was the first thing, getting that process in existence. The next step is making sure that my team can do a good job of it. So separately, we then created our training checklist, which is the series of steps of how do they get to a point they can do a good job. So first is, okay, read the brochure, understand the brochure. Step 2, read through the process of how you do a call, just walk through it, make sure you understand it. Now watch a recording of Alexis doing it as part of a role play. Okay, now do a role play with a member of our team. Now get some feedback, now do another role play. Agree with your mentor at a point that they're ready, that you're ready to now do it with live customers. Now do it with live customers, share the recordings with your mentor, get feedback. And so that checklist allowed them to self-manage their own training. And I was just involved in the essentially providing feedback. And so that enabled us to kind of do the move over. And there were things that we need to improve, like there were things that they took a bit long on. I was like, oh no, you know, perhaps we're stuffing too much in there, or maybe we didn't address some of the objections, so we changed it. But we just iterated that in, and that made the difference.
Could I just make a meta comment to everybody before we move to the next question? Do you know why doing things like writing brochures? I mean, is there anybody here that goes, you know what, I'm super excited about writing our next brochure? Right, so do you know, have you ever thought about why does it feel difficult? I think a reason why it feels difficult is writing is thinking on paper. So in order to write something, you've got to clarify your thinking. So the people who are in our board of advisors groups, they have to prepare a board report to come to the meeting. And a lot of the value, Kat, is in the writing of the report, because you're forced to document what's going on, what your plans are, etc., on paper. And the reason why that's hard is because most people are unclear in their head. They are not clear about what's going on. So it feels difficult, so we avoid it. But of course, that's where the value is. So that's why when Alexis was talking about the brochure, it forced them to think through, oh, what's the process? And in doing the, he said, paraphrasing slightly, doing the brochure, clarified, oh yeah, it should flow this way. That makes sense. So the brochure feeds then how they did the training and vice versa. And overall, the output is better, right? And that's why sometimes in here, consistently, the lowest feedback isn't the sessions where somebody's talking at you and you get a great keynote speaker and they give you some, it's the ones where the lowest scoring sessions are typically the ones where we make you sit and think and write stuff down, because it's hard. And that is why it's a competitive advantage, because most people won't do it. So, I mean, he was talking about the brochure, but I feel there's a bigger concept.
I think that's true, and even just deciding, like, because it's we talk about subtract, the temptation, and in sales, like the easiest way to sell is that you don't have a very fixed offering, and therefore you can entirely tailor it to the customer. But that's an absolute nightmare downstream, and actually, as I've found,
can't scale it.
Yeah, you can't scale it, but I've actually found that it doesn't actually help your conversion that much, because there's so much uncertainty.
Right, they can't
don't know what. Yeah, they don't even know what they're buying. Yeah, and so yeah, that's one of the hard things, is you're nailing yourself down to, this is what we do. Like, there was even a part in here where we talk about our accelerator package, and there was a time when we were like, oh, well, it's 6 to 8 workshops. It's like, well, depending on the length and so on. And I was like, we need to give more certainty. It's 8. It's 8 workshops. And so even if it's like, well, in theory, we could have done it in 6. No, it's like, it's 8, because then people have got the certainty and you haven't got the question. Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
It's a really valid point about certainty, because we used to be exactly like you, like tailor everything and change it and so on. And then like you went, no, we looked at the programmes, thought this is the one that works. That's the one that we're going to do, and we're not adapting from it because we know it gets the best result. And so now when people say, oh, but can we not have that bit? Or what if we did that bit? What we say is, we know this is the one that works best. So either you do that or you don't do anything, because we want to get you the result. And I think, you know, that's what certainty also implies, even if you're not saying it that explicitly. So it's a really good point. That's a lesson.
Love it. I was about to say we're out of time, but since Topher's left the room, we're not out of time.
Let's go.
Rock on. So probably final question. Jacqueline.
I think it's absolutely genius. It really is. It's a brilliant idea. I love the whole thing from start to finish. I've got a really strange question. It's a very particular question. You're saying that you send that in the post to people. You don't. So how do they get the brochure?
So people can go to airmanual.link/discover.
Get you £50 later, Jacqueline.
To get the, thank you very much. To get the online version, and that's how, like, and we share it with anyone who arranges a call.
Or at the event that you're at the other week when you booked the course.
Exactly. So at the event that we're at, which is the first time we've done a physical stand for Air Manual, and I think it's the first time we've been at a physical event for any business that I've had for at least 7 years. And so there we had a pop-up stand, and we thought, well, we're going to need some printed collateral.
Yeah.
The first thing that we found is you can't just print something that works really well as an online PDF and expect it to look okay. You've got to add margins and all that kind of stuff, which is a right pain. But it was so worth it, because then when you're at the stand, being able to have that conversation. But importantly, people didn't get hold of this unless they scanned the QR code and filled in the lead form. We could have just gone, oh yeah, off you go. But we decided, you know what? The likelihood is they take it away and do nothing with it.
The psychological element of getting something physically was effectively the lure to capture the lead.
Yeah, and particularly for the other resource that we have, which is the ebook on AI and ChatGPT. I mentioned that as part of my presentation, put a QR code and said, scan that, fill in your details, and you can come and get printed one at the stand. We took 150 copies, thinking we'd be taking some home, and we sold out of them. Like they all went, and there were still people coming up wanting them. And so it's just like, oh, wow. And as you say, that was the idea, is like, we're giving something valuable, and because it's physical, people could have just gone, well, I've scanned the code, I've got the PDF, but it did have value for them. So, so I'm really glad that we did do that, and I love the idea of actually sending this out postal. Yeah, although Paddy's not going to be happy if we have to add more forms to our more fields to our form.
It's definitely something to test.
Yeah.
But you're not going to send it out if people fill the form in online. You'll send them the brochure in the post.
That's currently no, and we don't. That's what I'm trying to sell him on.
Currently no, and we don't collect their address data. So how would we?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, so we'd have to work out how to do that and so on. But currently no, they can view it online and they get sent it as a link.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time. First of all, give a round of applause for Mr. Alexis Kingsbury. Thank you, sir. Okay, turn to page number 5. High value ideas. Jot down any key takeaways for you from that segment.
Yeah, we're good. I got it. Yeah, I'll take it over. Yeah.
Last 30 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, and if you are finishing up with your high-valued ideas, feel free to check your phone. You should have a text message with the review sheet. And then I've got a quick announcement, and then we will head off to break. I like this brochure, Alexis. I'll share with you one additional concept on this. One of the biggest difficulties that service-driven companies have that product-driven companies don't is there is a psychological permission to negotiate prices on services because it's intangible. Like you would never go to Morrison's or Sainsbury's, fill your card up, and get to the checkout, and they go, that'll be 143 pounds, and you go, is that the best you can do? Never happened, right? Or what if I pay cash? Can we do a little deal? But in services, people feel almost entitled to do that. So one of the ways you can psychologically take a service and turn it into a tangible product, which is non-negotiable, is to create a physical brochure. Very compelling psychologically. Yeah. All right, forms are in your phones for the review. A couple of quick things here to preface you. So if you remember correctly, June is coming up. We're going to have our 3rd annual Ultimate Entrepreneur Competition for those of you that are new. It is a chance for anybody to compete for the title of Ultimate Entrepreneur, where you get to get up on stage and share with the group some of your key distinctions, what you've done to overcome adversity, how you've grown your company and your business. Audience gets to vote on a criteria of 5 or 6 different things, And then Dan cuts a check out of his pocketbook for £10,000 to give to you as a reward and a cool trophy and some bragging rights saying that you're the ultimate entrepreneur. Our goal for Q2 is to have every one of these seats filled to capacity to support all of the people that are up here, because we know that that exponentially allows them to get greater exposure. It gives you more motivation to want to get up on stage and actually do your presentation so you can tell a bigger audience about your company and what it is that you do. It's a great way to garner leads, garner business, get some more credibility, and also get some great video footage of what it is that you're doing that you can then convert later into a promotional video. So the benefits are limitless. Even if you don't win the actual award, it's just worth competing on that. But what makes it even better is that every seat in the room is filled with that. So what we'd like to do is, as we go to break, you're going to notice that we have copies of both of Dan's books over on the table, and we would love for you to take a copy of each of those and give that to somebody that you feel would be of the correct caliber and stature to be and deserve to be in this room as a business owner. Think of like, who do you know that if they were in this program, you would even get more value out of this program because you would have somebody on a regular basis to constantly compare notes, hold accountable. Think about that individual. We'd love for you to just give Dan's books to them as a gift. And then if you could, we'll also have, when you come back, we'll have it passed out referral forms so you could share our contact information, their contact information with us if you feel like you'd like to do that. But we would love it if you could start actively thinking now, how could I bring at least one? Lisa, we expect at least, what, 5, 10 from you? Okay, there we go, yeah. To really pack this room, to make it just an exceptional event and really something special for all of you that decide to compete in this year's competition. Deal? Deal. All right, cool. Let's head off to break. You've got 25 minutes. Be back here at 11:15. We'll see you at 11:15.